Today we're going to take a look at the Voyager electric skateboard from Swagtron. The Voyager is a $400 42-inch electric skateboard. The board has an 8-ply deck and weighs just under 20 pounds. It has large 90mm wheels with dual hub motors in the back. And it also has a remote with a full LED display that shows you things like your speed and your battery life. So before I get into it, I need to mention that Swagtron says this board has a 15-mile range, but my main use for this board is about a 2-mile daily round trip. So I can't really speak to long-distance commuting or if this thing can really hit the 15-mile range, but it does work great for my short-distance needs. So the first thing I want to talk about is the speed of this board. The specs for this board say that it can go up to 15 miles per hour. However, I was only ever able to average about 13 or maybe a little less or a little bit more. And of course your top speed can be affected by the weight of the rider, but this board does say that it has a max weight limit of 330 pounds, and I'm about half that, so it shouldn't have affected the speed too much. And there actually is a way to increase the speed of this board, which I'll talk about a little later, but out of the box, these are the results that I had. So I want to talk about the remote for this board. I actually really like it. I think it's really cool that it has a backlit LED screen that shows you your speed and the battery life of not just your board, but also the remote, and it shows if your board and your remote are linked. It's a great size and it's comfortable to hold. And an interesting feature of this remote is you can see on the left and the right side of the throttle, there's a plus and a minus sign. Well, these are used to slowly ramp your speed up or down. So you can click the plus sign a few times to get going the speed you want, and then it'll actually get you into a cruise control mode and keep you at that speed until you press the throttle to get out of it. So of course you can also just use the throttle like a regular electric skateboard. Forward is to accelerate and down is to brake, just like a regular board. Except with this one, you can also get into the cruise control mode by holding the throttle at the speed you want for about 3 seconds. And while this may sound kind of like a cool feature, I kind of wish that they would have left it just to the plus and minus buttons. When I'm riding something potentially dangerous like an electric skateboard, I want to be in full control, which means when I press forward on the throttle, I go faster, and when I let go, I should slowly start to slow down. But with this cruise control function, you'll be going really fast holding forward, and then when you let go, you'll keep going just as fast. And this can be a little annoying, especially if I see something coming up ahead that I'm going to have to slow down for, so I let go of the throttle, but I still am going towards it at the same speed. And that may sound a little nitpicky because you can just say, well, why don't I just hit the brakes? And well, that brings me to my main problem with this board. Technically, the brakes on this board work really well, and that can actually end up being a bad thing. See, the brakes on this board don't really have a gradient where you slowly slow down. It's sort of like you'll be flying pretty fast down a hill, and as soon as you sort of slightly engage the brakes, they completely lock up and stop the board. Now, I've been riding skateboards for a long time, so I kind of got used to the feeling fast and how you have to lean back. But if you're not a skater and you're not expecting this, it can potentially be dangerous and cause you to fly off the front of the board. Luckily, where I am, there aren't many cars around, so it wasn't much of a problem, but I definitely wouldn't want to take this into a city with a lot of traffic. So I'm going to quickly go over a few other features of this board, and then we'll get into the pros and cons. The charge time for this board from 1 bar to full was about 2 to 3 hours, which seems pretty average from what I've experienced. One cool feature about this board is that it has a kicktail, which I haven't seen on too many other electric boards. This can be really handy because just like a regular skateboard, you can kick turn if you need to, or manual, and you can even ride off of curbs and not worry about scraping up your battery. The kicktail also has a little cutout handle for you to pick it up by. This works pretty well if you just need to pick the board up off the ground, but it's not really practical for carrying it around because it's so long. The board has an IP54 rating, which means you can splash it, but I wouldn't take it out in the full rain. The board also has a 15% incline rate, which isn't the best, but you can still get up hills relatively easily and it won't slow you down too much. I did take it to a few hills and did notice a decrease in speed, but it was still definitely able to make it up and over. And also I should point out that as far as I can tell, this board does not have regenerative braking. And finally, one thing that was supposed to be cool about this board was supposedly it could go up to 30 miles per hour with an ungoverned remote, but it looks like it no longer says this on Swagtron's website, so while that would have been really cool, it looks like it's probably not an option anymore. However, I did open up my board and tinker around and ended up getting it up to about 20 miles per hour, which is definitely better than 13, but in my opinion, it's how the board should have come out of the box. So for the pros and cons of this board, I would have to say I do really like the remote for this board. I think it's one of the better ones that I've seen. It's nice to be able to see your speed and your battery life without having to use a phone. I also thought it was cool how this board has a kicktail. It kind of makes it feel a little bit more like a normal skateboard. And also the cruise control when you're using the plus and minus sign, I think is a really cool idea. So that part of it is going to go into the pro section. And the last pro is the price, because it's relatively inexpensive for an electric board, but it really kind of depends on what you're using it for to see if it's really worth the price tag. For the things I didn't like about this board, I would have to say the issues that I had with the speed not really reaching the full potential when I took it out of the box is definitely a downside if you're trying to travel some distance without actually taking forever to get there. And then the cruise control when using the throttle, it really started to annoy me because I don't constantly want to be in cruise control just because I held the throttle forward for 3 seconds. And finally the brakes, they were just a little too strong without any kind of gradient to kind of get you eased into it. It seems like they work really well, but when they're that jerky that you can just press down and then fall off the front of your board, it really can't be seen as a pro. So overall, if this board is worth the price tag, it'll really depend on what you're using it for. If you're in the market for a fun electric skateboard that's relatively inexpensive just to play around with and take short trips on, then this may be the board for you. However, if you're looking for a commuter board that will take you several miles a day, possibly traversing hills and navigating traffic, you may want to invest in something with a little bit more power and speed and a smoother braking system. So basically, it works for me if I just want to take it down the road a few miles to the park and back, but I probably wouldn't take this thing on a 10-mile journey to the next town over, and I definitely wear a helmet on this thing if you're a beginner. So I'd like to thank Swagtron for sending me this board to test out and review. And if there's any cool skate products you'd like to see me review in the future, let me know down below in the comments. And besides that, thank you for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.